Hey, what's up, car fam? Today is a super exciting day. As you can see, I'm in the Civic Type R. This car is amazing. I've been dreaming about driving this car for years. I've driven it once. I had a photo shoot and video shoot with a guy in 2016, 2017 when it first came out. That was fun, but I literally only drive it for like, I don't know, a minute. I didn't drive it that long. So I've had it for a couple days. I actually rented this on Turo, so I'm really excited to actually spend more time with it, get familiar with the car. And I'm approaching this video from the angle more so of someone that's interested in this car. Maybe you don't drive stick right now and you're thinking about it and want to learn. So I learned a little bit from my mom and then just driving a couple cars on and off throughout the year. So I'm definitely not the greatest, far from it, but comfortable enough to get around town, get on the freeway, all that good stuff. So I just wanted to do a video kind of reviewing it from that perspective and then just kind of talking about my overall impressions of the car. So many highlights, very, very few minor complaints. So I'm gonna go ahead and just drive around, gonna hit some back roads, kind of go around town and all that good stuff and just kind of talk to you about my experience with the car and then also the experience with my family that's been driving in the car with me. So let's go ahead and hit the road. So right now I'm driving in sport mode. I've mostly kept it in comfort, to be honest, but it's pretty empty out this morning, so why not? So what I like about this car is it's honestly easier to drive than cheaper manual cars. And sorry for the lighting if it's kind of crazy. But it's very approachable. So some cars that you get in, let's say it's an older manual transmission car, the clutch feels super tight and it's hard. The gears are not as short throws and they're a little more like rough. So this car honestly is a lot easier and everything's a little bit more buttery. It does take practice for sure. Trying to get things done smoothly and depending on your shoes, seating position. I'm actually sitting a little bit more closely to the wheel and everything and pedals than I normally would, but you have to have really good, you have to have your feet positioned in a really good place to make sure you can always clutch in like 100% and not like barely miss it or anything like that. Because if you do, then that can make it a lot harder to be able to, downshift, upshift. Let's say you're on the freeway in a stop and go traffic. Yeah, so your foot positioning has to be like really on point. And then there's so many different ways to drive a stick. Like it's crazy. It feels like there's 3 different ways to be able to stop depending on what you want to do. But I'm not going to get into that because like I said, I haven't been driving it that long and I don't want to share any advice on how to do it because there's definitely really professional people out there that have been doing it much longer. So I'll start off with my overall first impressions. Comfort. Dude, this thing is crazy comfortable. Like the seats, I know people talk about it, but you have to sit in this car and really experience. Like, okay, if there's one at your local dealership, try to get in it for sure. The seats alone, I think, is, it's just amazing. So it feels like a couch. Depending on your body type and things like that, it could be more or less comfortable. So just something to consider, which is why it's even more important to sit in one of these to make sure it's a good fit for you before you go, investing all this money into a Civic Type R. But for me, it's super comfortable. And I've noticed the longer you sit in it, the more comfortable it gets. So it's like this, feels like a couch. That's literally the best way for me to put it. But as you're turning and, let's say you're on a canyon road, carving the canyon road, all that stuff, you feel really secure because the bolstering is literally like keeping you. So I don't move at all pretty much when I'm in this seat, but it's a comfortable, like I'm not moving, not like I feel stuck and I don't have space. So, and then even for the passenger that's on your, you know, to the right of you or left of you, depending where you live in the world, they get that same benefit too, because sometimes, let's say you're having fun as the driver, but the passenger is like swaying the whole time because the seat's, you know, not that great. But this one, my wife was saying, like, even though you're turning, like, obviously the car feels really planted and solid, but she was like, I feel really good in these seats because I'm not swaying around the whole time, which is nice. So the seats alone, man, like, that makes this a really great daily driver. So something to think about. Another thing I would say is the suspension. So comfort mode, man, it feels so solid. Like, I was shocked. I didn't think it'd feel this soft. I don't know what I could compare it to, but because it's a very unique feeling. Like, you feel literally so planted to the road for sure, but it feels so soft. And even when you hit bumps, it's not too harsh, especially, let's say, comfort mode. You hit a bump and it's like, you know, the wheel, especially because these cars come with such thin, low profile tires, you know the wheel is like, you know, bouncing and it hit pretty hard or whatever. You don't feel that as like intense in the cabin, so that part's nice. You just more so hear it than feel it. So I guess that's the best way for me to put it. Driving in sport mode, you start to feel things a little bit more, for sure. And then Type R mode or Plus R mode, you know, I haven't used that setting too much because these roads really aren't always the greatest, but I did it on the freeway for a little bit and it was totally fine. It wasn't too bad, but you definitely can kind of feel like the car is like almost like that just a little bit because it's like responding so quickly and everything's so, you know, it feels good. It's not bad at all. But yeah, this car is so incredible. Another highlight, we went to Costco to get some, you know, groceries and things like that because I was like, hey, I want to really see what it's like. Clearly there's so much space in the hatch. You have a ton of space there. You can put the seats down if you need to. And so you get a lot of space because of that. And so we put a bunch of stuff in there. That was awesome, being able to have like all of our groceries plus the full back seat. And I'll insert that into this video here so you can see it. So check it out. Hey, what's up, car fam? It's day one with the Civic Type R. Trying to do regular stuff so I can get a feel for the car. So we had to make a Costco run. As you can see, tons of space in the car. And then these seats right here go all the way down, so then you get even more space, which is sweet. So as you can see, tons of space. That makes this a better daily driver for sure than even other cars. And I'm glad they chose to make, I was thinking about this yesterday, I'm glad they chose to make the Civic Type R in hatchback form because they could have gone the sedan route, like the Civic Si, that's the sedan version. They could have done that, but I'm so glad they did this because then that checks off way more boxes when you have that much flexibility to be able to like, oh, I need to bring 10 boxes or whatever. Like, you can do it. And then there's a video from the straight pipes on YouTube. I think this fit 13 of those like pretty large storage boxes. So that's basically like SUV levels, compact SUV levels of storage space. So that's really awesome. That's just another highlight that makes it easier to be able to want to take this somewhere. And then even when you're shopping, it's like you always have that idea sometimes if you have a smaller car, like, man, will it fit? That's a nice item to buy, but then I have to think about who am I going to call or get a truck, all that kind of stuff. This kind of solves that problem for you, so it's crazy. So those are some of the highlights from that perspective. The driving impressions, more so handling, I want to touch on. I drove to Napa from Sacramento, and we basically took the road that goes toward this lake. It's called Lake Berryessa. Very back road, windy, lots of like sharp turns, all that jazz. So perfect for me to be able to get a sense of the handling. I did have passengers with me, so I didn't go that hard because I didn't want anyone to get too sick or anything like that. But it felt amazing, and you could tell the limits are extremely high in this car, but also approachable, even though it's front wheel drive. So I drive an all-wheel drive car right now, and this definitely feels, on average conditions, mind you, not like in the rain or snow, like there's no comparison, but for just canyon carving roads, this felt extremely well to be able to handle, and there's very little body roll, and I had it just in sport mode. I didn't do comfort because I knew we were going to be like literally going back and forth, so I kept it in sport mode. And for me, it felt so good. And for a drive where it was like 40 minutes of just, left, right, it felt so planted, and I love that. And so most cars have so much body roll, even if it's a little more performance oriented. This one didn't. It felt very sharp. You feel like you're always like on flat, an even surface in a sense. You don't feel like the car's always going, leaning in one direction. It takes a lot for this to lean. I did notice though, trying to think of when exactly it happened. I noticed that sometimes on the highway, I'm not sure what it is, but it does feel like it can sway a little bit. And these tires also are not the ones that are recommended. The one that that are on here right now, I don't even know what brand they are. The person that's renting this out on Turo had to swap them. I guess someone damaged the OEM wheels and tires, so they had to replace them. So I can't, knock it too hard. But normally that has to do more so with just like the overall car, not necessarily the tires. So let's say I'm on the freeway, kind of going fast a little bit, kind of slow down. It's just certain moments. I can't pinpoint it because it only happened like 2 or 3 times, but I do feel like a little bit of movement in the rear end, which is interesting. And this is going straight, because I could understand on a turn, that makes sense for the car to kind of like sway because you're throwing off the balance of everything. But this was a case where I'm going straight and then slowing down, I think, and then you kind of feel the back like just a little wiggle. So I thought that was kind of weird. So that might be a front wheel drive thing too. I'm driving all wheel drive all the time, and my car is not that sporty, but it's it's an Audi A3 with the 2-liter Quattro all wheel drive, so it drives great. But that was just something I noticed that I was like, I didn't expect that to happen. Other than that, it's been absolutely incredible. So would I recommend this? The answer is definitely yes. If you do have the luxury though of having this and then something else, that'd be awesome. But if you don't, you're not gonna have any regrets. And then definitely, like, if you can, go for an extended test drive. And depending where you live, if you face more or less traffic, that's something to consider for sure. You're going to be like, pledging in and out pretty frequently. So just something to think about. But overall, this thing is so much fun. It's literally a toy. This is like a toy for a grown-up that's into cars. That's what this is. But if you need to do things and like I said, normal day-to-day stuff, we need to get a bunch of groceries, like you can do it. So going on to a couple things that I don't like. This is a 2017, by the way. I didn't tell you that in the video. So this is a 2017 model. The first generation of them for, this current generation. I noticed that, at higher RPMs, this car is pretty buzzy. So what I mean is like the front dash area where, you know, everything is, the motor. At higher RPMs, you can tell there's a lot of maybe less sound insulation and things like that. So you get this like buzzing effect a little bit. And I've driven performance cars, but they're a little bit more premium, so you don't have that happen as much. So it's not, you know, a deal breaker for sure, but it's just something I noticed, and that's what you're signing up for. And you're getting a car like this. This isn't a comfortable, this isn't like a luxury Lexus or something like that where you have, you know, all this sound deadening and things like that. So just something to keep in mind. But I mean, depending on how you're driving, you'll be okay anyway. This car is so much fun. Even if you're going like 25 miles per hour, that's what I like about this car. Like, you don't even have to be going that fast to enjoy it. You could literally be chilling, but if you get on it, you can tell, like, man, the limits are so high. So from what I've heard and also experienced, this is one of those cars where it definitely does not like to be rushed when it comes to shifting. You want to have pretty consistent, like, what do you call it? Smooth, slow shifts. You don't want to be going too fast for sure in something like this. So yes, I'd highly recommend this car. You should definitely try it out. If you can, rent one, or if you know a friend, do a ride along in it. It's always good to get an idea of what a car is like from the passenger side too. We are always like, oh, okay, like, what's it like when I'm driving? But you want to make sure your, you know, passengers are going to be happy too. But ultimately, this car is so much fun, and I see why these have always had a lot of love and, you know, have been hyped. I've been on it since 2016. When they first announced it, I was like, this car is a dream. Even though I hadn't driven it or anything like that, I was like, that car is amazing. I could already tell. I love the looks. I guess the only thing that is a little bit funny is the back end, but for what you get, like, it's a compromise that is worth it in my opinion. It's not that bad. But going on, I do want to talk about the 11th gen Civic. So I drove the 2022 Civic Hatchback Sport. That is a really solid indication of what the 11th gen Civic Type R is going to be like. So the suspension was really good, and they beefed up the sway bar in that one. So the hatchback basically is the more sporty of the two. So you have the regular Civic sedan, and then you have the hatchback. If you're looking for a little something that's more fun to drive, the Civic hatchback, and then of course the Civic Si would be the next tier up. But yeah, so that's a solid foundation for the 2022 Civic Type R. The interior is what I'm most excited about. That's such a clean revolution of styling for the inside. It's gonna be timeless, which is what I like. This interior, in my opinion, I don't think it's ever really been like my favorite. I like from the steering wheel through the gauge, but everything from the right forward is whatever to me, in my opinion. I don't like the red accents as much. It's not something I hate, but for me, if I actually bought one of these, I would black that out for sure. I just think the red is a little bit overkill. The seats I love, and the red seat belt I love. That's perfect. But the rest of this, I think that could be blacked out. A little bit more of a midnight vibe. And then, yeah, with the new one, spot on the money. That's the best. That's my favorite interior besides going up to like a very expensive Audi or something like that. But I love how minimal it is. Yeah, it's going to be great. So the 2022 Civic Type R, I think, is going to be definitely the one that's going to have owners. Even if you have this car, it's amazing. Trust me, it's amazing. I think the next gen, though, is going to be the one that's, for one, is going to look a little bit more minimal. So I think that's going to be the one that when you're 45, 50, you're still going to love. This one, especially because the interior is like going to be dated faster. That's going to be the difference for sure. So I'm really excited for the 2022 Civic Type R because that thing is going to be perfect. And the GT style wing, it's basically going to be, to me, in my opinion, more of like a Cayman GT4 RS style with that wing, obviously, but in a 4-door hatchback type of setup. So I think that's super cool. It's going to be timeless. It's going to be timeless. And then when the aftermarket starts to kick in for it, it's going to be good. It's going to be really, really good. So I'm excited for it. I'm sure some of you are excited, or maybe if you're a current owner of this generation, you're like, nah, I went through the hassle of even trying to get this one, because even buying these is probably just as hard as like trying to get things sorted with buying a new house. I know it's hard, markups, all that stuff. So I feel you on that, and this is definitely not a bad option. So we'll see. I think it's going to be an interesting time to see how many of these come on the market when the new one is announced, and also when as people obviously think about maybe trading these in and waiting for the new one, or if they're just going to keep these. But I have a feeling there's going to be some really great low mileage options of these on the market right now. There's a decent amount out there, but I think there's 436 right now in the country. So I think it's going to be cool to see more of these come on the market with different years, and then it'll just make it a little bit more competitive to maybe save just a little bit. Not much, I don't think a lot. If anything, maybe $1,000 or something. But it'll be cool to see some of these, especially if you're like thinking about maybe should I wait for the new one and just keep saving and just get ready for that one whenever it releases. Maybe by the end of this year it'll come out, but of course it's going to be a slow trickle of them actually getting on the lot because of the chip shortage. But I would say drive one of these. If you're in that position where you're like, hey, I'm either going to buy one of these and try to get the best deal I can for something that's maybe 35 to 42 depending on the mileage and year, or just wait for the new one and then kind of go from there. But honestly, even if you were like, I don't want to go through the hassle and markups and all that stuff, you can get one of these, be super happy, keep it for as long as you want, and then just kind of go from there, because you're definitely going to be in a pretty positive, most likely, position from an equity standpoint and things like that, because these hold their value very well if you get a good deal and put the right amount down, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, love the car. I think the only other downside I'll end it with is the infotainment, but Apple CarPlay saves that for sure. It makes it a lot better. If you can get straight to that menu, you'll feel like, okay, I'm in 2022. But if you're just on the main home screen with like the radio and all that red, UI, it definitely feels dated, and it's kind of slow, not the greatest. But other than that, amazing, amazing, amazing car. Definitely something that if you can own one car at least once in your life, this one should be on your list. So that sums it up for me. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more content. Catch you in the next video. Peace.